Hi, everyone. I'm Craig Smith, and I am the managing director and the founder of Phoenix Theatre Ensemble. We are entering our 20th season, producing in New York City. And for the last 5 years, we've also produced in Rockland County in New York, in Nyack, New York, which is actually 24 miles north of New York City, right on the Hudson. It's a beautiful spot. And I'm the executive director of a festival that we run in Nyack. That's the Phoenix Festival Live Arts in Nyack. It's a month-long festival of art, dance, music, theater, some performance arts, and that type of thing. It's been very successful for us. We've been received grants from the I Love New York, which is very competitive. They see this as a place that's going to draw tourists to this area, and it's been great. It's been very successful, and we're very happy with it. And this past year, we had two of our productions in the festival. They were Drinks with Dead Poets by Glenn Maxwell and Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment by Marilyn Campbell and Curt Columbus. Both of these were incredibly successful for us. They sold out in Nyack. The response, the buzz was wonderful. And we said, oh, it would be great to try to do this in New York. So we're remounting both of those shows for a limited run off Broadway in New York City. Crime and Punishment is going to start on January 19th. It's going to run through the 28th, and then Drinks of Dead Poets is going to start on February 3rd and run through February 28th. And they're going to be at the Gural Theatre, which is at 502 West 53rd Street. It's a beautiful, accessible, lovely, lovely space. So we're looking forward to being there. And today we have the playwrights with us for Crime and Punishment. We have Marilyn Campbell and Curt Columbus. And I say playwrights and not adapters because this is not your usual adaptation of a big Russian novel. And I've had some experience with those. Is that when you do like a Dostoevsky play, whether it's The Idiot or The Gambler or The Brothers Karamazov, is you basically shoehorn all of this information into 2 hours and then you do it. And they were very successful because Dostoevsky is a tremendous storyteller, and people even all these years later, love to hear the Dostoevsky stories. But this one is very different. They have created their own original, unique content that is based on the Dostoevsky novel. And we have with us Marilyn and Curt, and just a little bit of background on this. Marilyn Campbell is a published and translated award-winning playwright. Her plays have been performed across the U.S. at Berkeley Rep, Actors Theatre in Louisville, Trinity Rep, and Cleveland Playhouse. Internationally, London's West End, Oxford, UK, Australia, Greece, and Hungary, and New York City, 59 East 59th, Classic Stage Company, and Provincetown Playhouse. Awards include the Chicago Joseph Jefferson Award, LA Backstage Garland Award, and a nomination for LA Drama Critics Circle, among others. And then we have Curt Columbus with us. Curt became Trinity Repertory Company's 5th artistic director in January of 2006. He is also artistic director of the Brown Trinity MFA program in acting and directing. He has okay, reading is my forte, of course. Trinity has been the home of a world premieres of 3 of his plays, Paris by Night, The Dreams of Antigone, and Sparrow Grass. Trinity has also produced his translations of Chekhov's Cherry Orchard and Ivanov, as well as Feydeau, A Flea in Our Ear, and works by Lope de Vega. Prior to coming to Trinity, Curt lived and worked in the Chicago theater scene for almost 20 years. He was artistic director of Victory Gardens Theater from 1989 to 1994 and director of the University of Chicago's University Theater from 1994 to 2000, and the associate artistic director of Chicago's Steppenwolf Theater Company from 2000 to 2005. So these are some terrific credentials on these two wonderful playwrights from us. A word about the plays. Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. At the production in Chicago, I'll say Chicago said, only occasionally can a production of a classic make us see the work differently. This adaptation and production reminds us how thrilling a classic can be. The New York Times wrote, Crime and Punishment, in a feat that rivals the construction of the Hoover Dam, has been distilled into a taut 90-minute play by Marilyn, Campbell and Curt Columbus. Just 3 actors tell the tale and may have you confessing to some murders yourself by the play's end. At our production in Nyack this year, New York City critic Daryl Riley said this is a towering, purely theatrical incarnation of the novel, and went on to praise the glorious production and the brilliant acting. We hope you will all come to see this. These are remarkable theater makers who have put this together, and I'm going to have some questions for them. Marilyn, maybe you can start. How did you come to do this particular incarnation of this rather large and lengthy novel by Dostoevsky?
Well, I am a co-founder of Writers Theatre in Glencoe, Illinois, and at the time, our artistic director was Michael Halberstam. And Michael had the idea that he wanted to direct it. I mean, he wanted to create an adaptation. So I was first hired. I was the first person that was brought on board, and I spent about a year distilling it down. He had specific parameters. He wanted to begin with just the conversation between Porfiry and Raskolnikov. But once I got into it, I realized we had to have Sonia's voice, or we really didn't have the redemption aspect of the play. So I added in Sonia's voice, and we started there. We centered it around these 3 characters. But what happened with my adaptation, so I got my adaptation down to about 2 hours and 45 minutes. We had the 3 characters at the center, but I also had sort of a chorus of 4 additional actors, a mature actor, a young actor, a male, and then 2 females. So they were picking up kind of the other characters and doing some narration. So we got to a point where we really were wanting to take this leap from page to the stage. And we were kind of stuck. So Michael had this idea to bring Curt on, thank goodness. Number one, because Curt speaks fluent Russian, and he did the most brilliant, wonderful Russian modern translation of the play, which is so poetic, and I think is really what makes it so unique. And then Curt was able to help us to get rid of the extra characters. And we did turn some of the narration into lines in the play. For example, when Raskolnikov addresses the audience and talks about, do you believe in that whole speech was narration in the original adaptation. And we turned some of that into speeches, and it works, really well. So together, all 3 of us, then we took it, then we were on with it for about a year on the road. We went to Provincetown first, which was so interesting. They did an adaptation, then we got picked up by Orlando Shakespeare, and they did some work on it with us. But finally, we got to a place where we felt like it was finished. And then we did a production at 59 East 59th Street and tinkered with it a little bit more. And then it was on its way.
I think the cool thing on this is that, what you have really done is you have really entered into the mind of Raskolnikov and his psychological struggles with doing this. And this is such a fabulous and unique approach to the ultimate big question of this play. The big question, and you zero in on it like that. I was doing an interview, a radio interview, and we were talking about it, and they said, "Well, how did you get 500 pages into into 90 minutes?" And they said, "How long is this script?" And I said, "Well, it's about 50 pages." So, but people need to appreciate and understand the unique creation that you have made based on the springboard of Dostoevsky and the power of confession. And it's really interesting to hear that it took that amount of time with it. And Curt, it's interesting that you are a Russian speaker. Our associate artistic director is also a native Russian speaker as well. So we've been doing a lot of Russians lately. And there's, what is it about Dostoevsky?
Well, Craig, just to jump in to talk about sort of the reason that we have three central actors here in this piece is because of Dostoevsky's obsession with the spiritual life, with God, right? And so, one of the things that we talked about in those early rehearsals with these three incredibly great actors was this notion of the Trinity, right? Being central in Russian Orthodox theology. Representations of the Trinity are throughout, like the Orthodox Church, and Dostoevsky was a very devout Orthodox Christian. So, there's no way really to approach his work without kind of grappling with this question of spirituality. And I think that's what helped, when we started working on this, Marilyn had this really beautiful adaptation, but we just essentialized the questions in the novel. I think that's how we got it from the story of the novel to kind of like the essential questions, right? So, its construction, I think, is based on how great the argument in the novel is for the notion of acceptance, redemption, however you want to call it.
And you see the actors and the characters, but the actors as well. It's kind of meta theater in a way, because you have the characters from the novel, but you also have two actors playing all these different characters. So that it has an ultimate artifice to it that these actors are doing that, and they are both working in leading this person, Raskolnikov, to an actual admission of confession. And when we were first doing this in rehearsal, I was saying to people, I said, one of the most personal things that you can ask someone is, do you believe in God? And I just don't know how you go beyond that. And then do you believe in the story of Lazarus? And you understand where it's coming from Dostoevsky and his deep personal belief. And that's also shows up in The Idiot and all of his other plays as well, other novels as well. So that commitment is there. And it's a kind of thing you do not hear in most contemporary theater. Is these real personal spiritual questions. And Curt and Marilyn, you also you use the device of repetition in the play. Those questions are repeated several times, and other parts are repeated as well. Can you tell me how you arrived at this device and how that happened?
Well, yes. But I want to back up just a half step and say, Marilyn, Marilyn and I are both obsessed with poetry, right? She has this wonderful piece about Anne Sexton, the great American poet, also award-winning, also produced all over the place. In poetry, the notion of repetition is about musicality, and how that musicality, we see this in Shakespeare, can trigger certain emotional responses in people. So I think it comes out of the impulse that we share around the poetic. on some level. And then Dostoevsky was an obsessive compulsive. And so he's, as you just pointed out, Craig, he circled the same damn themes 8 billion times in his novels. So it's also representative of Dostoevsky's obsession as well.
But the device you used in this, the repetition of these actors, of these characters, repeating these questions to Raskolnikov, if you are in the mind of Raskolnikov and they won't leave you alone. Why are you keep asking me, do you believe in God? Go away, but they come back, and I think it has a disorienting effect on Raskolnikov. But the other thing that's cool about it, it has a slightly disorienting effect to the audience as well. Because didn't they just say that? Was that just repeated again? And then you wait another couple pages and it comes up again. And it's a good disorienting effect because it puts you at the edge of your sheet, at the edge of your seat, where you're listening. You're a much more active listener to what's going on. So I think that device works really well. One of the things we touched on, we didn't really talk about, was this was. It was originally a commission, and can you talk, Marilyn? You did a little bit about the stage history of the play, but this play has been all over the place. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, first of all, Dostoevsky is loved and that particular play, Crime and Punishment, has been instrumental in so many people's lives. So we find when we did it in Rhode Island, was the artistic director there wanted to act it because he was obsessed with it. And we find that with so many directors who came in touch with it in high school or in college, and it never left, and they were obsessed with it. So that's part of it for sure. Also, Curt and I are in 2023, we celebrated 20 years of this play being on the road.
Yeah.
It was created in 2003, and Curt and I had a discussion a year ago about how we should do something for our 23rd anniversary. And here you all showed up and just did the most brilliant, wonderful, reviewed production that we could have asked for. So and let me speak to this too. I think any dramaturg in any theater can create a adaptation of Crime and Punishment. But ours just is beloved. It's beloved in Europe. It's beloved all over the country. It is just, and I think so much of it has to do with Curt's translation, which is totally unique. And then this magical thing that happened with us. And it really was, sometimes in the theater, you create something that's perfect. And you're lucky. And if you do, and this is one of those things that just worked. It got published. It won the Jeff Award. It got picked up all over the country. It's just been an enormous, tremendous ride for us. And now that it's been in Europe as well, in Hungary and Greece, something interesting. Prague Shakespeare was supposed to pick it up. And I know the man who runs it, and I've talked to him recently, and they're a little reticent because of Putin and the Russian situation. Sure. It surprised me because Hungary is even, seems more vulnerable than even Prague, but it's been embraced, and I'm just so proud of it. I just think it's
I think there's a reason that we go back. There's a reason that we go back to the Greeks. We go back to classics because they ask fundamental questions that are universal. And I think that Dostoevsky does the same thing. We keep going back to them. I mean, the questions that are asked in the Brothers Karamazov or The Idiot, or even to a lesser extent, The Gambler, and in Crime and Punishment, are these fundamental questions. And I think as people, everyone struggles with these questions. The power of confession. Do you have regrets? How do you live with regrets? And where are you depending on your position in society, and where are you as a spiritual human being? The Greeks do this, so we keep going back to Oedipus, we keep going back to the Oresteia and things like that. And I think we keep going back to plays like the adaptations of Dostoevsky, because they ask the questions. And I have to tell you that the response from our audience in Nyack, and I'm also hopefully it's going to be the same in New York, but people, use the expression, "Oh, I was blown away," or they said, "Oh, I'm speechless." And I heard that a couple of times too. It's very hard to react to a performance when you've just seen it. That so they were struggling with that. But I think it asks for a question that is deep within them, and to bring this out in something that sounds cogent, in a response to that is very difficult. So that their result is, I'm speechless. And several of them that saw it in Nyack, and they're coming back to see it in New York.
Hmm.
One of the things, yeah, please.
So I just Craig, want to say two things. One, classics classics in and of themselves can be museum pieces. But if we look at why we're doing it now, which I think is one of the things, when this project came along in the early 2000s, it was right during the Second Gulf War. We had a lot of questions about right and wrong and the existence of God and all of that in the society. So it was really responding to the moment. You're pointing out that it also brings a lot of evergreen things, right? So it never loses its currency, but there are times when it's more and less urgent, right? And so the adaptation, we're very fortunate. The adaptation was received as well as it was, because I love that we're still able to revisit it 20 years later. We can't believe it. And so that's why I think people get really into it. It is that it raises questions that we all have in our lives every day. So
Totally. Please, Marilyn,
I
go.
was going to say one thing. One of my favorite moments, I traveled around the country a lot, and I've seen many productions. But one of my favorite moments was at Actors Theatre of Louisville on Easter Sunday, when we took that moment and had the prostitute and the murderer reading that story of Lazarus together. Was the most moving. It was just, that's the effect that it has on people in those private moments, like you said.
No, it really does. And it's very interesting you talk about directors. Elise Stone is our artistic director, and she's playing the women in this as well. And she's fabulous in it. But I was talking to her the other day, and I said, the story of Lazarus is so theatrical by itself. And I'm holding a book and kind of stage managing and that kind of thing. So I've heard it so many times, but every time it holds because it itself is a great story. And you end up hanging on it, oh, is he going to resurrect this time? Maybe he won't, So it's universal that way as well.
I think the thing about that story in that moment, though, is Sonia, once she gets into, Raskolnikov asks her to read it, so it's not her choice to read. But once she starts to read it, it becomes so personal to her, right? And her experience, death over and over again, and the daily death that she experiences as a faithful person, doing sex work, that there's just so much to her in that story. And that's that great combination, right? It's the literary, it's the Lazarus story to begin with, it's Dostoevsky's take on it, but then when it's acted, when you see someone who's truly great in that part, they bring this wealth of themselves to the story, and the story changes in a way that it wouldn't have otherwise resonated. So
Yes, yes, it does. And Lisa's a very spiritual, very soulful actress. When she starts reading this, she starts reading it, and then of course she knows it by heart, and the book goes down and it goes up, and it becomes something other, for the audience, and it also becomes something other, definitely for Raskolnikov as well. And just going back on is that I think a standout on this is, Raskolnikov getting caught up in this kind of new modern thinking, which I describe as cultism, a political cultism, the extraordinary and the ordinary individuals. And then, when we first read it, I said, oh, this sounds like Nietzsche. I mean, we need to go back and take a look at this and say, is he talking about Superman, or what's he talking about? This kind of thing. But the fact of the matter is, we have people in our society, and we have corporations in our society who consider themselves extraordinary, and they are not culpable or accountable to the law and the means of so that just rings so true right now, because there's they go out and they break the law with impunity.
Presidential immunity. I'm sorry, but we've just spent a whole week listening to that crap, and it's totally this, right?
That's right. And then I love when the detective says, you got involved in a false theory, and one that wasn't even original. It's just, it's crushing to Raskolnikov to realize all of that. I think as people can see, this is just an extraordinary play, and it brings up just extraordinary questions, and it does what theater should do. And Curt, maybe you can talk a little bit about, we struggle in Phoenix Theatre Ensemble. This has been, it was difficult in 2019. It was not easy, and before COVID. But since COVID, it has been a big challenge. There's been a lot written about it, about national nonprofit theaters, and how we're going to respond to this. And respond to what? Well, one, there are less people coming. There's perceptions, and then there's realities. It's that the numbers from ticket sales are not what the perception is. Even though government has been very good in coming and being helpful to organizations and helping us to recover. But I was talking to friends, and they said, from 2020 to 21, it's going to take us 14 to 15 years to fully recover from COVID. I think there's truth in that. There's been attrition of artists who left the business because they're based on a gig economy, attrition of audiences who stayed away, and we lost a lot of them. We lost their contributions, and attrition of artists, of audiences who just got used to staying home. I'm going to stay home and watch Netflix. I don't know. You run a nonprofit. Maybe you could have a few moments to talk about that as well.
Well, I view all of this slightly differently, in that, yeah, I mean, COVID was devastating. No, audiences have not come back in the same way. No, and in fact, the traditional audience has not come back. I do think, however, Craig, that this is a moment of opportunity. We see this in nature. When there's a fire, some of the older growth gets burned down, but then it makes way for new things. I actually think we're at an inflection point. I mean, you're talking to Marilyn, and I have been in the theater for over 40 years. And I've been hearing...
You're both newbies. I've been in for 50 years. So.
I've been hearing about the death of theater since I started doing theater, right? I mean, it's like one of those, yeah. Oh, yeah, the theater's dying. Yep. What I see as an opportunity, really, is that young people have spent the last several years in such extreme isolation that they are not even eager, like starving for opportunities to go out and be surrounded by theater that challenges them, that makes them think. I don't know how many people are going to go back to the 15th annual production of, you know, I'm trying to think of something, Avenue Q, delightful, funny, all of that other stuff. But do we really need to see it again and again and again?
Right.
I think that those of us who focus on work with our communities are seeing that those communities are responding and coming. For example, we're doing a play right now called La Broa, which is an adaptation of true historical narratives in Providence, Rhode Island, from the Latino community around this one street in Providence. We've already passed our sales goal for that. We haven't opened yet. We won't open for 2 more weeks. So
I have a theory that theater's making a comeback because it's the one place where AI cannot exist.
Yep.
It's a room full of heartbeats
True, yeah.
and the truth. And if you want the truth, you know, you're going to find it in the theater.
And I find that a lot of our colleagues are programming things that they think the audience wanted to see 5 years ago.
Yeah, social justice propaganda, I call it.
And it's, you know, or just stories that are so quaint that you go, well, who cares about another production of Murder on the Orient Express, for God's sake? A wonderful book, but it has nothing to say to us now. This is the distinction between that and something like Crime and Punishment, which is about questions that we're having in courtrooms around our country today. So I mean, like Marilyn, I feel like this is a moment of opportunity. If we just say, y'all, we're live, there's no AI here, you can be around other people your age. So I see hopefulness.
I agree with you on that, and congratulations on that with the local community. We have found that also in working with Nyack, is that we are embedded in the community. The community is part of what we do, and they have been very responsive, and we've had very success there. It's been one of the cool things about being a leader of a nonprofit arts organization. You know, you always live with it. Okay, we're going to change the world. You know, I'm going to change the world one step at a time, and we're going to go. You know, yeah. But I find that when I'm working at Nyack and I'm working with a local community, and I bring some tourists in from New York City, and they go buy a piece of jewelry at the local jewelry store, I have had an impact that it's tangible, that's real. And also, we've been doing a lot of work on, you know, how to make the idea of going to the theater an event and not just going and seeing another play. So there's stuff around it, and that the festival is very good that way. And we're also trying to do that somewhat with New York, and we have an incubator program where we are developing new works based on text. We've got a metamorphosis that we're doing right now, Wind in the Willows that we did. And these are all by our associate artistic director, Leo Lyon, who we hired as associate artistic director when he was a freshman at Fordham. And he's keeping us on our toes, like great, and developing all these new things. And for these people, for these young people who have been isolated, you know, I think you're absolutely right at that. There's hungry, but they also want to have experiential experiences. They want to be part of the program. They unlike people of my age, they don't like audience participation. You know, who don't like audience, they want it. You know, so metamorphosis, everybody comes in and they have headphones and they're all listening to different tracks of the Kafka, and they're all wandering around this place and things like, and interacting with each other. It's fascinating stuff, and looking at that. And then we're doing a role-playing thing as well. And I agree. I think that there are opportunities for us, and you're right. The graying of the audience in theater has been dead. You know, I was hearing that in the 1970s as well. But it's still kicking around. What do you guys, anything that you're working on, do you want to talk about a little bit?
There.
Well, I have 5 commissions right now.
Oh,
My
wow.
career has just blossomed here in my dotage. I would say what's happening in a big venue right now. I just developed a play at Quintessence Theater in Philadelphia with my friend Paul Oakley Stovall, and we did an original play of Phyllis Wheatley, American icon,
Amazing.
and so we were nominated for a Barrymore Award now, and now we've moved on and we've got some interest in developing it further. And I think she's the one that's really going to take off next for us.
Oh, congratulations on that. That's
Thank
wonderful. I just wanted to talk about commissions. You know, we commissioned Drinks with Dead Poets by Glenn Maxwell. And because you guys are both into poetry, I think you'll find this very interesting. It's in a fictional town, which happens to be Nyack, New York, and has the last open library. But he's a visiting professor, and he walks into this bar in this Nyack, and it's kind of, there's nobody there, but there's an employee, and she's redacting Wuthering Heights. She's crossing out all the stuff in there, and she's wrapping it in saran wrap. He doesn't know what's going on. And it finds out that they are barbecuing, and not burning, they're barbecuing books in the local village square. And as they burn the books of poets, the smoke drifts into the bar, and the employees breathe in the smoke, and they start channeling the poet. So we have a male bartender who is Sylvia Plath, and Dorothy Parker shows up, Allen Ginsberg shows up, Edgar Allan Poe shows up, and all of that. And it's a fascinating work. And he's a Brit. He's a very celebrated Brit poet. So it's really interesting. It's like in a way, it is a love letter to American poets from a Brit. And he asks the question, what happens to the words when they leave the page in those situations? Do those words go on? Do they disappear? What goes on? So, maybe that'll be good. Curt, what's up?
Oh, I'm running a theater, Craig. It's all that I do these days. That's more than enough. Just trying to keep us going. This adaptation of La Broa is coming up, and then we have Fences after that. We have a production of La Cage aux Folles after that.
Yeah.
Putting together my next season. So there's a lot going on. It keeps me busy.
Well, congratulations, and thanks so much for sharing your time and your words today. And this starts on January 19th, and it's Phoenix Theatre Ensemble, and it's not Phoenix, Arizona, it's New York City, Phoenix Theatre Ensemble. And there will be, we'll have information here on how to order tickets. We hope you'll come. We're going to have some talkbacks and things like that, and it's going to be a very cool evening. Thank you, both of you, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig.
Okay.
I'll be there on the 23rd with my son.
You got it. Look forward to it. Okay.